Today we're going to spend time talking about something that founders don't spend enough time on, and that's investor reference calls. How do you do these investor reference calls? And what do you ask the founders that you talk to? So Eric, tell us, is it worth a founder's time to make these reference calls during a fundraise?
Yes. Absolutely do this. We assume that it takes between 7 and 10 years for a company at the angel and seed stages to mature into something that maybe IPOs, gets acquired at some point. So these investors are going to be people that you have to interact with for a long time. And just taking that extra small step to make sure that these are good human beings, strategic people, is something that you're going to really appreciate, and that is going to compound in value over time.
So Eric, can you explain the process of investor due diligence?
I think that investor due diligence is actually quite simple. It doesn't need to take that long either. So the idea is first start by asking the investors for 2 references. Ask, hey, Janelle, are there 2 founders that you've worked with that I can speak to? Because I want to learn a little bit more about what the relationship has been with your founders. So that's the 2 right there. And then try to find at least 2 more founder references, maybe people that are off the list that the investor has, so that you can just get a different kind of perspective. Sometimes you can learn some new things there. And those calls can be very, very brief.
So Eric, you've gotten 2 founders from the investor. How do you find these other 2 founders?
Aha. So this is a really good question. The way that you find these other 2 founders, I think that there are 2 methods that have been working very well with the founders I speak to. One is when you talk to one of the founders that the investor has referred you to, at the end of that call, ask to see if there's another founder that founder can refer you to. That, I think, is the easiest to get a sense of who's within the orbit of the investor whom you're considering taking capital from. And then there's some other methods that work pretty well too. If you stalk your investor on LinkedIn or Crunchbase or some of these public databases, oftentimes you can find other names of founders that the investor has worked with and just reach out to them cold. You'll be surprised how effective it can be to do cold outreach when it comes to investor due diligence.
Okay, so you've set up 3 or 4 calls with founders. What do you ask them?
I think that these calls can actually be even like 5 minutes. I recommend 2 questions that you can ask. And I learned this method actually from Scott Cook, who is the founder of Intuit. And what he said to me was, look, the first question is on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being perfect, 1 being catastrophic, how would you rank this person? Uncapped Notes is a series produced by Hustle Fund designed for first-time founders.
Follow us on socials and don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe.
And then what you do is you can put the phone down for a little while, grab a snack, because whatever they're going to say is going to be generally like an 8 or a 9, something very, very high, and it's some sort of pre-canned response. And what you do next is to ask the really critical question, which is, what would get this person to a 10? And most people are not prepared for that kind of introspective question, and that's when you hear the real truth of things like, well, I wish that investor Janelle were more strategic this way, or were more responsive, or she's on vacation too much, things like that. Not this Janelle, of course. So that's really all it takes is just 2 questions, scale 1 to 10, and what would get that person to become a 10?
The fundraising process is a busy one. How does a founder work this into the process?
Yeah, so when do you do this due diligence? It's a very specific period of time. You conduct this investor reference call after the investor had committed to invest in your company, but before you accept. Okay, this is really important. Do not waste your time doing investor reference calls before they've even committed, because it might be wasted effort. And certainly don't do it after you've accepted the commitment, because you're locked in. You really should honor those commitments. So it's during that period of time between the commit and acceptance, any good investor should give you enough time to conduct these calls, because that is what a responsible steward of capital should do as a founder.
This is a long-term relationship you're starting, and spending the extra effort at the beginning can save you a lot of pain down the road.
Well, founders, I hope that you have a good framework for thinking about investor reference calls.
Thanks for watching, and don't forget to drop a comment below and like and subscribe to Uncapped Notes.